Hey there, folks. Welcome to Spectrum Pulse. We talk about music, movies, art, and culture, and it's a dawn of a new era. Likely a little more contentious and controversial along the way, and there'll of course be stumbling blocks. Let me know in the comment section what you think they are, but I am here for it, if you are. A series where I tackle albums in shorter, bite-sized chunks on a weekly basis with maybe a little bit more flair and humor. Can't take yourself that seriously these days, after all. And the best way to begin this series is ass first, pointed directly at the stuff that I couldn't get to from 2019, voted on by the mostly fine folks on Patreon. So let's stick the landing here. This is On the Pulse. First up, from Rhapsody of Fire, The Eighth Mountain. Let me be blunt. What I once knew of Rhapsody, it's been dead and dismembered for years now. The co-founder's been gone and founded his own band by the same name, and since then the only consistent member has been their other co-founder and keyboardist. Even their last frontman stepping in as the lead songwriter, he's gone too. So, Rhapsody of Fire is looking to start another ambitious saga. Kinda tempting fate. Especially when for as much tinny speed metal shredding, triggered drums, and guitar wank as they deliver, strong hooks, a coherent narrative, interesting poetry, consistently structured songs, and a fully fleshed out groove section, they wound up being forgotten in this too long ascent up the mountain. It's not promising when I hear the late Christopher Lee's narration for the closing track describing the narrative of this album that they couldn't effectively deliver, and then feel that his narration deserved an album that could actually match the gravitas instead of the rather rote power metal that Rhapsody of Fire brought to the table. The most scathing indictment of epic fantasy, calling it routine, and Rhapsody of Fire have been routine for entirely too long. And yet even with that, I don't know folks, I'm still the nerd who likes goofy as hell power metal, so it does get a pass. Somehow. I'm thinking a 6 out of 10. Next up, from Mabel, her debut album, High Expectations. Don't wanna talk about us. Gotta leave it behind. One drink and you're out of my mind. Hey, Dua Lipa was successful, so if you're the daughter of Nina Cherry and one of the producers in Massive Attack, why not lean into that R&B side with a splash of Rihanna if you want to rip off the formula for 2019? Shame they forgot to create a unique personality along the way in the course of streamlining and overproducing this project to an inhuman degree, along with missing the biggest improvement they could have made on the formula by consigning the melodies to a reverb-soaked backdrop instead of putting them at the front. Yeah, there's a couple good grooves, but the derivative anonymity of the production, not helped by the metric ton of headache-inducing auto-tune dousing the album, and the by-the-numbers writing suggests that expectations should have been set a hell of a lot lower, even in the case of blatant nepotism. I mean, you'd think that she would have gotten that Ariana Grande sample off if she didn't have those connections? Just saying. It's a 5 out of 10. Next up from the band Seratones, Power. From the wilds of Bandcamp, you can hear the sounds of retro blues, rock, and soul, as if it was imported from the mid-60s, or the mid-2000s revival of the sound with maybe a little bit more convincing grit and obvious eyes cast at Amy Winehouse. That's what we got with Seratones, a band with Louisiana swagger that might have felt a little sedate and kind of meandering on their 2016 debut, but have got considerably more firepower this time around, differentiated from peers like Alabama Shakes and YOLO thanks to a much leaner smolder here, backed up by some warm, sinuous bass lines and a burnished swell from the keyboards and guitar work. Frontwoman AJ Haynes is delivering that sort of sultry firepower that's got the emotive subtlety and complexity to command the room with ease. But you have to ask, what puts them above just being a blast from the past? And how can we cool down some of the overly sexual description coming off this album? Well, honestly, this is where you'd hope the writing would do some heavy lifting, and while it is good, and the profanity does actually help it stand out, it is kind of patchy, especially if you're expecting any sort of deeper complexity in the framing or the themes. Although cuts like Permission and Sad Boy certainly do go in some unexpected territory, show a little bit more experimentation, maybe even a bit of kink. So yeah, okay, solid enough in broad strokes. I want to see some more in the fine details. I also might now need a shower, so 7 out of 10. Next up, from Chelsea Wolfe, Birth of Violence. A lot of artists don't typically discuss the hidden risks of the Back to Basics project, especially the ones for whom the basics are shrouded in mystery and lost to time. Demystification. That's when the mist falls away and the playing field is once again level as you emerge from the nightmarish abyss, and you're stuck with a middling folk album that's admittedly well performed and kind of introspective, but isn't really all that interesting or unique in all its curdled nihilism, especially considered to how deeply she delved in the last two projects. I mean, sometimes you run out of trauma and have to make the songs about how touring kind of fucking sucks. Such is the trauma of a true goth. Now look, I gave this project multiple seasons of frigid nights and bad weather to grow on me, but even the portentous moments of her murky beginnings feel kinda strangely bare here, with haphazard mixing trying to fuse all the elegance and gutter rock distortion. I don't know, maybe Chelsea Wolfe needed this, but revelations are always cutting both ways. Although that storm coming might be intriguing. I'm thinking a 6 out of 10. Next up from Sam Fender, Hypersonic Missiles. You know, if I wanted to hear a muted Bruce Springsteen imitation with questionable production and scattershot lyrics, I would have just listened to the underwhelming album the boss himself put out last year. And yet, if only Sam Fender could rise to that standard, as he takes a lack of restraint from the war on drugs and a sense of histrionics from Hozier on cuts like Play God and Call Me Lover, maybe a bit of U2 as well from that sound, and then attempted to make the sort of conscious, overreaching debut that can only come from reading his label's press junket, and then failing to realize that Rick Costi's production is going to give him the canned drum machines and airless weight of cold vacuum. And what's even worse is how poorly framed the overwritten but painfully basic overreach actually is. Putting aside how often Sam Fender will just ignore any rhyme schemes, any veneer of self-awareness implies more of a smug martyr complex. So even if he calls out his own privilege on the song White Privilege, it just sounds incredibly obnoxious, along with a healthy dose of both sides whinging that alternates between somewhat being affected and then detached and wears out its welcome in record time. I mean, the album gets a bit more tolerable when it stays away from explicit politics and tries to tell more personal stories, but the problem there is that the influences still clearly overshadow everything that's on display, and the production still sucks. In other words, Sam Fender is to Springsteen like Greta Van Fleet is to Led Zeppelin. Poor man's imitation that might get the surface, but really does fail when it tries to do anything deep or different. 4 out of 10. Next up, from Elbow, Giants of All Sizes. Survive the white noise of the lies. So Little Fictions was a good return to form for Elbow, but anyone who gets this band knows that if they go political, they can miss the mark as simultaneously going too broad and too oblique. They don't handle abrasive, cutting anger effectively, they'll fumble the political butter knife here. And then going more intimate, lyrical parallels, that just translates to overwritten awkwardness, especially when they frame themselves as more observers to the trauma and turmoil than being directly touched by it, which kind of kills any populism or greater power you might have. But what I don't think anyone was expecting was the oversold percussion and the stodgy, sour, overranged melodies. At their worst, these stiff and blocky grooves, but without the alien weirdness a St. Vincent album would provide, and none of the structured focus to elevate any progressive rock refinement. All this just translates to a misshapen, badly sequenced, and rather ugly album that rarely knows how to lean into the ugliness, tripping over its own attempts at gravitas, and yet pompous as all hell trying to comprehend this strange new world. In other words, if you can't tell, kinda disappointing. 5 out of 10. Next up, from Alcest, Spiritual Instinct. It is promising to see one of the more long-running, adventurous stalwarts of frigid but soaring atmospheric black metal deliver something just as melodically satisfying as their best. All clear, overdubbed singing against the distant screams, glistening tremolo shredding, and the brighter focus that they've become more known for, along with some pickups that were allowed to get a little bit more snarled and textured, which is where the album easily gets the most intriguing and striking. Credit to Naish finding deeper tranquility along the way to exploring and reconciling channeling some inner darkness, even if he is using a made-up language to do it, which no, I'm still not over being kind of ridiculous. And while I was looking for the stronger grooves or more vibrant lead work across the black metal passages, he ultimately found the jagged, meditative clarity everywhere else. Good for him? I mean, this is one that needed the cold winds to really draw it forth, and it wound up being a pretty great album. And anyone who wants to rant about this not being true cult or some nonsense, they can throw themselves off, I think, several cliffs. Because for me, this is an 8 out of 10. And finally, from Patricia Taxxon, Foley Artist. This isn't the first nor the last time I've talked about Patricia Taxxon's eccentric electronic experimentation, and appreciate the alliteration, but this is certainly one of the darker pieces. Some have compared this to a follow-up to the panic-stricken 16 sketchbooks ago, both the more abrasive industrial tones and an undercurrent of dysphoria, but this is the project where subtext becomes more outright text, where the language chosen is a little harsher, a little more primal, but like with 16 sketchbooks ago, there is a note of genuine hope to tie things together, confronting her own dark night of the soul and coming out harrowed but stronger. And looking at a lot of the production and flow of the project as a whole, and how it plays through that arc through some fleshy, contorting electronics into eventual swell of glistening keys coming off of one of her best ambient pieces this year, is probably one of her most consistent projects, but I wouldn't quite call it one of her best. Now granted, when you have the high watermark of the closing track from Victory Lap that is concentrated wonderful and is a real cheat code to my heart, I'm not sure anything she was gonna put out was gonna match it, but I do think some of her darker compositions can be more textural impact than tonal, and it doesn't quite align with her choice of language that does have that primal intensity embodied. That being said, this is very good, has one hell of a 1-2 punch to end itself off, and has the feel of being a necessary album for her to make. And for her, on that note, I'm happy it's here. So yeah, 7 out of 10. Good stuff. So yeah, that was the start of our little series here. Not sure how long these episodes are going to be or how much really goes into it. Please leave your comments to how I should better structure this or whether the visuals work. I'm still trying to iron out some of the kinks here, and I'd be happy for all your feedback. Keep in mind that I'm going to actually have a part 2 of this where we go into another 8 or so albums from 2019, so stay tuned for that in the next couple of days. We'll see where that goes. But hey, if you'd like to like and subscribe, I'd be more than grateful. Want to see other videos in the series? Or maybe hop on board to my Patreon so you guys can request albums. Links in the card, right over there. Until then, I'm Mark, you're watching On the Pulse from Spectrum Pulse, and I'll see you next time.